20 years ago, a reality TV series about a struggling promotion aired on Spike TV that, for better or worse, would go on to change the landscape of sports and pop culture. This is a retrospective of that series, its key players, and its lasting legacy. This is TUFtwenty.
TUFtwenty is brought to you by The Contrarians, a movie podcast where we are right and you're wrong. Be sure to subscribe to The Contrarians on your favorite podcatcher for access to this entire series, as well as Julio and Alex's most recent film follies. Our main website, wearethecontrarians.com, houses all of our past episodes as well.
You can find The Contrarians across social media under the handle @ContrarianPrime.
It's not just us, though. As for this 14-part journey of nostalgia and shame, we've got a championship corner.
I'm Joe Holbert, and for years I've discussed fake fighting on the internet. Now, however, I'm trying my hand at the real thing. Usually, you can find me at the Late Night Grim, but for this particular adventure, I'll be sitting under the Team Couture learning tree, providing insight to my fellow men of honor.
It's niche micro-celebrity Steve. You may know me from Twitter, the Songs with Friends podcast, or various scuffles in the world of professional wrestling. By the end of this journey, you are no doubt going to feel this, because this is the ultimate.
Now that the cage door is locked, let's get down to business.
Time to talk asparagus.
Fellas, we have made it. It is episode 12. It is the final episode of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. It seems like just yesterday we arrived at the house, and now we're here to ring in the light heavyweight semifinals. That's right. It's a doubleheader. We got 2 fights on this episode. And most importantly, Sam Hoger making his debut in the cage here. What a time. It was the night after WrestleMania 21, and we are just a few days away from the finale. That Joe, if you're Dana White and the Fertittas and Spike TV, the butterfly's got to be rumbling at this point, man. This is what it's coming down to. It's all on the line here.
It is indeed. The only thought that will be on your mind is, God, I hope the finale fights aren't bad. Right? That's the only part of this. Because with combat sports, you can do 1,000,001 things to hope you're going to get an exciting fight, but you never know until the guys get in there. So you can only imagine the nerves in that regard, because it's all building to that, right? That's where we're headed.
And throughout this episode, we promote the finale here. And this is the most, it's been mentioned a couple times, and specifically in the last episode, but this is the most coverage we've been given to the fact that the finale will have a main event that is not associated with the show. And that main event pits rising star Rich Ace Franklin up against the legend of both combat sports, MMA, professional wrestling, what have you, Ken Shamrock. Now, I can't remember if I had mentioned this yet in the series, but the original hope and what was on the table was that this was going to be Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock in a fight. But this was, of course, during one of the countless times Tito Ortiz was on the outs with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So they think, fuck it. Because at this point, they were determined to make Rich Franklin a star. And you can tell just by the advertising, the marketing for this.
This Shamrock guy, Alex, is he related at all to Silver Shamrock?
The evil mogul that released the Halloween masks with the intention of killing the children around the world?
Yes, he is.
Amazing. It's a hell of a backstory.
I was just about to say, since Julio, is our fresh set of eyes to this, and we may have people listening to this that I know we do, because Filmbusters Ben said he was going to listen to this, and he doesn't know anything about this sport. So, Steve, if you could give us a brief history lesson on one Ken Wayne Shamrock and what he meant to MMA and pro wrestling.
Man, I should be more prepared for this, because I just read Ken Shamrock's book this year. The one that Snowden wrote. Ken Shamrock is a fatherless bastard.
Got his ass.
Who was adopted by a gentleman named Shamrock. Bob Shamrock, was that the guy's name?
Sounds about right.
Taken into a boys' ranch kind of situation, and was just a wild, rambunctious youth, like a real warrior spirit, if you will. He was a horse that could not be broken. He ended up in the world of professional wrestling at the independent level, but more importantly was on the very first UFC. I don't want to say he was marketed as the guy, because the Gracies collectively were the guy, but he was kind of the everyman and a real star and hero of the early UFCs.
Looked like an action figure, because this is before they were doing drug testing and stuff, and he just looked like a fucking comic book character.
Yeah, when the wheels started to fall off of the original UFC, he wandered into the WWF and was a professional wrestler there for about 2.5 years before coming back to UFC And him and Tito, those boys drew some money, brother. but by this point, Shamrock's body was not holding up as well as you would hope it would.
What was his last big win, Joe? Was that Chemo, when he knocked out Chemo?
Yeah, because he's coming into this fight for a win, so that would have to be it. Because honestly, in hindsight, it's kind of admirable he took this fight, really, right? Because I mean, in fear of getting into spoilers for Julio, this is like pretty transparent what they're trying to achieve with this, right? I mean, this is the oldest trick in the book. You use an old star to make a new one.
It's Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Exactly like that. Yeah, exactly.
Bringing him in so he can get beat up by the new guys.
And it's not the first time Shamrock and Leo have been compared, no doubt. I'm sure he's done it many times. I'm sure he's done it many times in front of the mirror. But yeah, I mean, he's a name, and there is a sort of aura to him because of the way he looks and the way he carries himself. There's some smoke and mirrors at this point, to be honest, which, by the way, would extend for another couple of years yet. There was still some more. You mentioned that Ultimate Fighter plan that would come to fruition, of course. So, yeah, Shamrock is a big, big deal. And I think actually, we spoke about this all the way back in the first episode when we kind of try to set the scene. I think he doesn't get enough credit for still being a big part of this surge in popularity because of wrestling fans wanting to see Ken fight, So he's definitely a pivotal piece of this, I think, quietly.
Quick sidebar here on Ken. I've been, I went through the Lapse Fans, their whole 97 anthology they did, and been watching some 97 WWF. Great year in that company's history. You could have put the belt on Ken Shamrock at that time, don't you think? He was over enough?
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I thought they were doing at one point.
Yeah, I think he's a case. I mean, he was a great fit in that era. But I think the way things would evolve, I do wonder about, like, if you could have a time machine and slot him into different versions of that company, I do wonder, because things get so glossy and theatrical, right, during his run. It's like his gimmick becomes he's the outlier for being just a straight-ahead ass kicker. So, yeah, it's interesting now. But he was only there for a couple of years, as Steve said, but he got over huge. He was a big deal there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, after reading the book, it made more sense because it turns out he was on enough cocaine to kill an army. He was missing shots and not acquitting himself well as a professional. So I think that ties into a lot of the 98 booking where all of a sudden he becomes the guy who's going to make The Rock a star. I think they realized he was going to self-destruct and let's get something out of this before we cut him loose.
Yeah, Ken Shamrock was a pretty insane person, Julio. One of the first big moments The Rock had as like a bad guy, like that was like a highlight reel moment, was in their feud. The Rock hit him in the head with a steel chair. That's day one wrestling stuff. But Shamrock told him to hit him in the face with it, and so like it's a disgusting thing to watch in hindsight. But The Rock just swings it sideways like a baseball bat and hits him in the face, and the ref jumps down and puts his hand on Ken's heart to make sure he's still alive.
Joe's shaking his head.
The reason is, and we could talk about this because this isn't spoiling anything for the show. Ken would have an MMA fight as late as, help me on this, Alex, 2017? 16?
Is that when he fought Kimbo? Yeah.
He fought Kimbo, then he fought Hoist.
Oh my God, he did fight Hoist and he got hit in the nuts. Yeah.
The reason I'm showing you is I'm thinking this is nearly 20 years before he steps into the cage for the last time. The brain damage is unfathomable, really. My God.
Julio, and I promise we'll move on from Ken here because we'll talk about him a bit more in the next episode. But to give an insight to his era of what wrestling fans wanted versus MMA fans. When he came in with a world of hype, and the WWF even partnered with the UFC to show clips of his fights, and they're like, oh man, this guy's really dangerous and shit. But then when he tried to do MMA style grappling, the crowds just did not give a fuck. There's a really infamous match he had with The Undertaker where they're doing these chain grappling techniques, and it's The Undertaker with his boner for making people think he's a real athlete, and they're just doing all this really convoluted shoot style wrestling to abject silence. The crowd is just boring. So to reach the level of popularity he was, it speaks to Ken Shamrock's ability he was, one, a real fighter, but then he also kind of understood pro wrestling, whereas in the history of shoot fighters transitioning, there's a lot of guys who don't make that connection, and he was able to and really good at it. And yeah, he is part of this story. He came up in the first episode, and he's part of the swelled interest at this time. But it's time to get serious, boys. We start this episode. It's the aftermath of Koscheck and Diego. We made allusion to it in the last episode towards the end. Koscheck is fucked, but he's got the pride on his side where they think he has a concussion, and he's got the oxygen tank hooked up to him, and the doctor's like, maybe go to the hospital, get checked out, and he just goes, no. Like, he's just, the pride has gotten him too much so. And then Dana White comes in looking like me and Julio during a weekday afternoon shift at the movie theater, where he's got the button up and tie on but no blazer, and it's kind of wrinkled, and he just came from the break room, and he's like, bro, you got to go to the hospital. It's the most like UFC bro shit ever, is Koscheck refusing to get in the ambulance and Dana White telling him he has to.
It's a hell of an opening, right? Because I think the first thing we see is that shot of Koscheck with the oxygen mask on, which we hadn't seen in the previous episode. Like, when the last episode ended, he looked bad, but he did not look like, I have to go to the hospital bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's not just an oxygen mask. What he's wearing is a non-rebreather bag, which essentially is making sure you're getting as much oxygen as possible, and you're not, as you exhale, the carbon dioxide, is not coming right back. It's getting you as high of a concentration of oxygen as possible. And then they're like, yeah, dude, your oxygen's zapped. Like, you better go to the hospital. Never mind that your forehead looks like you just got hit in the face with a belt. We need to get you out of here. But Dana's like, oh, you're concussed. We got to let you go to the hospital. Completely ignoring the fact that his oxygen saturation is probably in the fucking 80s when it's supposed to be at 95 or better.
It's fact, because I get White might have a concussion because there wasn't a knockout, but the cut from Dana saying that to Koscheck, like lying down with an oxygen mask on, was like, this seems pretty bad, Dana. I don't know if you're taking this as seriously as you should, man. He's like, what do you reckon, guys? Hospital? What do you think? But it is actually, I think, an important scene, because I think too often, and this is still a problem, I think the public, they think the damage of the fight is like what they see visually in terms of cuts, and also what they see in the cage with a knockout and knockdown. This is the damage of a fight, right? Like, what it looks like afterwards. Imagine the pain afterwards, and then it makes you think about, imagine doing one of these fights and then 2 days later having to do a coach's challenge, which was not that long ago, what these fellas were having to do. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's the famous case of like the fighters that, I wasn't out, I wasn't out. Like, the most famous one I'm thinking of off the top of my head, Meldrick Taylor and Chavez. When Meldrick Taylor, he should have been able to finish the fight, but because he wasn't showing it then, but when he got backstage, like, his body just was when the adrenaline dies down. And you see that with Koscheck here. When he walks into his dressing room, he just literally like crumbles to the floor. Mm-hmm. Like, he's emotional and, physically spent. And you're exactly right. This is the toll. It's not necessarily what happens in the cage. And
it happens more in boxing, but it also happens in MMA, where there are single fights that change guys' lives and careers. I mean, Meldrick Taylor's a good example of that, right? Never the same after that fight. It's a real thing. So I think it was, as much as I'm having fun with Dana's analysis of the situation, I think it was pretty necessary to have this in before the end of the season.
I think what they figure out is they need to reach a compromise, because Koscheck is obviously trying to save his pride. So like, all right, no ambulance, just somebody's going to drive you to the hospital. How about that? It's shocking a little bit to see him. He's been so casual and so just everything just bounces off of him throughout the entire season. And here you really see him defeated, and it goes beyond the bruises and the lack of oxygen. You can see in his eyes that he's just done compared to his demeanor the entire, the rest of the show. It was a bit of a bummer. This is I didn't feel as bad for him the previous episode, but this one, when we see the toll, that made me feel bad for him.
Those wrestlers, man, like Joe, those guys, the way they're wired, losses are very hard things to take, and you can see that with him here. Of like, because the biggest thing is he knows he was like beaten, like he knows he lost the fight, and it's hard for him to take.
I think he would have honestly dealt with this better if he was like submitted or stopped by strike. He was like out. It was grittiness that beat him, right? And endurance even more, which I think would have drove him nuts. The fact that he was outlasted in there. So yeah, he's hurting for sure.
And the worst part was he didn't have Randy Couture to give him a pep talk afterwards.
If he had Randy, he wouldn't have lost the fight, bro. But let's be clear about
Aw.
But he does have his good, close, personal, and longtime friend B South, who comes along with him on the ride to the hospital to make sure that he's going to be okay.
Listening to Candy Shop on the radio on the drive to the hospital.
It's going to be okay, man. It's going to be okay.
All right, so our middleweight finals are set. It's Diego Sanchez and Kenny Florian. Now, before we turn to the focus of this episode, that being the light heavyweight semifinals, it's time to timestamp us and where we were. As I mentioned, the show was the night after WrestleMania 21. This aired on April 4th of 2005. We've been talking about the Raws leading into it, so I think now's as good a time as any to run down the WrestleMania 21 card live from the Staples Center, Los Angeles, California. Broke 1 million for buy rates. This was the first of 2 times that WrestleMania went Hollywood. Steve, Joe, this for a long, long time, and you could also make the argument, is still the last time the WWF had a show that clearly put the entire company in a new direction. Most famous on the show was that John Cena and Batista both won their respective world titles, and it was very clear the company was now on their backs and going in a new direction, which maybe you could say Cody winning this year, but it's, you know what I'm saying. It's been a long time since we had a show like this.
Very much. Yeah, it's a very significant show historically because of that. There's also, those matches, there's some big heavy hitters prior to those matches that give it even more punch historically, right? And it's an often referenced show. The promotion for it is very famous too. So this is like, I don't think this is an era necessarily that people remember fondly, but I think this show is absolutely one that people remember fondly. Yeah.
And the way they handled the creation of Batista and John Cena as the new guys of the company. Remember, very, very shortly after this show, a quote from Vince came out where he was apparently telling people in the company, they're going to be our guys. We're going to be patient. This is going to work. And it was the last time Vincent K. McMahon would exercise that kind of patience in anything.
No shit, man.
Which is weird because it paid off, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was right.
For everybody involved. I'm pretty sure John and Dave are doing okay for themselves right now.
Yeah.
Julio, the promotion for this, like I said, was WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. So they did a series of vignettes where iconic movie scenes were reenacted by wrestlers. For example, The Undertaker was Dirty Harry. And they had a Pulp Fiction with Eddie Guerrero and Booker T, where, you know what they call WrestleMania in France? WrestleMania. I remember that was the tagline for it. But and then the big one was Steve Austin doing the Gladiator. My name is blah, 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 blah. And so here on the show, Rey Mysterio defeated Eddie Guerrero in the opener. That, to those who know ball, know that that's a hell of a way to start a show. In the inaugural Money in the Bank ladder match, which, if I could change one thing in history and wrestling in the past 20 years, it might be that, because I'm fucking sick of that concept. But anyway, Edge defeated Chris Jericho, Shelton Benjamin, Chris Benoit, Christian with Tyson Tomko and Kane. The Undertaker defeated Randy Orton. Trish Stratus defeated Christy Hemme. I don't know what the WWF got for that match, but it should have been 10 to 20 years. Kurt Angle defeated Shawn Michaels by submission at 27-28. And Joe, this isn't a match that's still debated to this day on its merit at all.
No, there's not regularly debates about the finish of this match and how long it goes, and details such as the selling of a single hold. That would be weird if people did that now, all these years later.
This match is, with the exception of the exaggerated finish, a great match that I really like. But Julio, it's like modern legacy is that I've told you about this guy before. His name's Dave Meltzer, and he like reviews wrestling and assigns things on a star scale, and 5 stars is like, his that's his seal of approval or whatever. And this match didn't get 5 stars, and this match is 20 years old, and people are still like mad and give him shit about it and like argue if it's like truly a 5-star match or not. And that's one of those things, all the time in our podcast, we talk about Ebert. He's kind of our North Star, but we disagree with him constantly.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're able to talk about that and be like The Master. It's like, he didn't like it, and that's one of my favorite movies of all time. But with Dave, Joe, and Steve, you can attest to this. Wrestling fans just obsess with what he gives his scores, like what he gives matches. And I always think of this when it comes to this discussion of this match got like 4 3/4 and people, it was a 5-star match, Dave.
I think so. Most of it is wrestling fans' fault, like definitely. I will point some of the blame at Dave because bless Dave, but like he doesn't like review the match. Like he just, like if you've read Dave's review, he'll just be like, then Sean hit a super kick. Kurt responded with an angle slam. German suplex, submission. This was great. 4 3/4. And it's like, it's very difficult to know. Like with
vibes were good.
Yeah, like you can read a Roger Ebert review and disagree with it, but he's definitely going to explain to you why he felt that way, right? I mean, whether you agree or disagree, Dave, there's not really how he approaches it. He kind of does it like maths, which I think is part of the problem. But also, yes, wrestling fans are insane. And then someone will say this is 5, and then it gets the whole new debate again about why it's not a 5. And then Dave does a quote tweet, and then we're all back to square one again, you know?
Well, but between that and Dave's ranking system just completely crumbling,
Yes.
circa 2015 or so, and then the introduction of a 6-star
And a 7-star.
2017.
Yeah.
So now matches can happen. And I swear, Julio, this is all completely legitimate. I'm not making this up. Matches will happen now, and they will get like 5 1/4. And now, a match can get 5 stars, and sincerely people will reply, not sure about this, thought it was 6. And it's like, it's out, isn't it? What are we talking about? 5 3/4.
So the 6-star, the addition of 6-star didn't retroactively make every review before that like 1-star lower.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And he's fine with that too.
It's
He's
still
like,
a 5-star scale.
I guess.
But then every so often he'll be like, oh, you know what? But fuck that. This one was awesome. Let's give it 9.
Dude, I remember the day that Okada Omega review came out and he gave it 6 stars. It was like, it was like Pearl Harbor. I was like, here we go. It's all downhill from here.
But the proliferation of 5-star matches all of a sudden, you went from having 3 a year to sometimes there's 40 and 50. Like there's no reason to debate this guy's taste at all anymore.
Maybe just wrestling got better.
I swear to you, I know you're doing a bit. That is like sincerely how he replies. Like I'm not like in that tone, that temperament. He will just explain like, "Well, it's better now, guys. What do you want from me? You know, the athletes. It is what it is." And then he starts talking about juggling and stuff. I can't. I swear, there's juggling's involved. And, I don't know.
Well, the point of the story is Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels, warts and all, is a pretty damn good time at the wrestling. It was followed up by a combat sport athlete in his own right, Aki Bono, defeating the Big Show. I still to this day don't know what they thought this was gonna accomplish. But then we move on to our 2 main players here. John Cena defeated John Bradshaw Layfield for the WWE Championship. Away he goes. And then Batista defeated Triple H at 21-33 to end WrestleMania 21 triumphantly. And Dave goes off to new levels of superstardom. Pretty good show. I remember watching it and staying up late and then having to go to school the next day. Like, ooh, would have been a senior high school. So the next night, Monday Night Raw, again live from the Staples Center, because they'll at least give you that. We don't have to hit the road quite yet. Man, what a barn burner of a show. 3 matches again. And there's a trend here, boys, that I'm sure you've caught on to. We're just dealing with the same players over and over and over. Shelton Benjamin defeated Chris Jericho and Christian in a triple threat. Chris Benoit defeated Edge at 15-14. And Batista defeated Randy Orton in the main event at 5:09. It's a pretty big match to give away on Raw the night after Mania.
Especially that length too. Yeah. It's these shows have big like GM mode on the video game energy, right? Like just names just spinning around.
Steve, we've entered a new phase in the history of this once great country, and that is with Kelly Clarkson entering the top 5 songs in the country. I'm assuming she held strong because I don't remember in this part of the 2005 being able to go anywhere and not here since you've been gone. So she's still kicking in the top 5.
She is climbing the ranks as you would expect her to do. It's not just enough to be at number 5. Oh, no. Being here is all right, but best believe she wants more. Number 5, Disco Inferno by 50 Cent. Number 4, Since You've Been Gone by Kelly Clarkson. So up 1 spot from last week. Number 3, Frankie J with Baby Bash, Obsession. Number 2, once again, Silver is the New Gold for Green Day with Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And number 1, the undisputed world champion of rap, pop, and everything in between in the mid-2000s, 50 Cent featuring Olivia with Candy Shop.
He's I guess this is where we get off on this ride, and 50 Cent's been carrying us the whole way, man. It's we've been lucky to go along for the ride.
Mario is the Koscheck of this story.
He made it to the semis. Julio, did Bernie Mac have a stronghold on the box office, or did the likability of Ashton Kutcher dwindle in the past week?
I mean, he did all right in the sense that it only dropped to number 2, but there was only one major new movie released this week, and it just took the world by storm. Think about which one might be, Alex, as I recount the other 4. Number 5 was Miss Congeniality, so it dropped from number 3 to number 5, $10 million. Robots fell from number 2 to number 4, $11.7 million. Here's another weird one. Beauty Shop, which wasn't even in the top 5 last week. I guess it expanded again, just like Miss Congeniality, and now it's number 3 with $15.4 million. For a total of $19 million. Guess who, as I said, dropped to number 2, $15.6 million for a total of $44. And number 1, Alex, Robert Rodriguez's adaptation of Frank Miller's graphic novel, like a series of graphic novels. Yeah. Sin City. I would say a minor shakeup of the way that blockbusters were made, in the sense that it kind of felt like nothing we had seen before. Unless you had read the graphic novel, in which case it was exactly what you had seen when you read the graphic novel. So literal translation, just every panel put in motion there. $36.6 million. Nice.
That is fascinating too, because yeah, for like the decade following that movie, there were a lot of things that tried to look like that, and like it doesn't. That style is kind of faded, you know.
I mean, even the sequel, which they made like I don't know how many years later, definitely way too late. It just couldn't recapture it. You know, it just felt like, yeah, we kind of saw it before. We didn't need to see it again.
That was Ram Jam. I can't remember if he did anything of note between this and The Wrestler, but I remember him being in there. It's got a big cast.
Yeah.
Well, adding something new here as this ride slows down. Not slowing down for our 4 semifinalists here. It's time to find out who's going to be in the light heavyweight finale, as it comes down to Forrest Griffin, Sam Hoger, Stephan Bonnar, and Mike Swick. Forrest and Stephan, we've already seen fight. So now we learn what old Sausage Tits and Mike Quick Swick are going to bring to the table.
Did you guys have a feeling that one of these fights was going to be shorter than average, just because we have 2? We've never had 2 in one episode.
Yeah.
I imagine also, well, one, as we talked about in the last episode, they realized they're light on content, and Dana wasn't able to go somewhere else and tell them how their business operates. So
True.
They had to put in 2 fights into one, but you got to believe also this was like trying to catch as much eyes as possible before the finale of like, we have 2 fights on this episode.
And there is some drama, right? You have the mystery of Bobby, who's still lingering around, and I don't know if you guys are ready to discuss the way he's informed of the news, but I think it legitimately may be the most mean-spirited thing on the entire show, and I don't say that lightly. Yeah, Bobby is like hanging around, cutting weight in case he has to fight. And look, guys, tell me if I'm wrong. I know I'm not always fair to Dana White, so maybe I misunderstood what he was saying here. He calls Bobby Southworth into a meeting. Bobby has just cut weight, and we
Bobby's
know Bobby,
nude.
big dude, right? Like, and he says, I have some good news and I have some bad news. And knowing that Forrest was going to fight, I thought he's going to say, bad news, you're not fighting. Good news, we're going to give you a spot in the finale.
Right.
Instead, he said, good news, Forrest is cleared. Bad news, you're not fighting. And I swear, dude, I know that Dana doesn't like Bobby. I understand, like, they've been, like, kind of quietly beefing. That was so mean, right? Like, imagine, he just cut weight, man. He's been hanging around in the house doing the dishes to hope he gets this fight. And you said good news, bad news?
This was an instance where you're supposed to use bad news, worse news. That's how you deliver it. You prepare him for it. I called Bobby Schrodinger's cat Southworth, because for the 3rd episode in a row, he keeps talking about how he's in limbo. It's like, I'm here, I might fight, I might not fight.
That's basically all he talks about, but then also making sure to bury Sam Hoger along the way. Like there's a part where he's like, Sam's a cheat, he's a lie, he's a thief, but I don't know if I'm going to fight, you know?
Well, Bobby walked into that meeting with Dana so optimistic. He's like, I made weight just now. I'm ready to go, boss. Dana's like, yeah, about that.
He comes in looking like he's ready to call his match because he's, got the towel around his waist. And he's like, all right, so what are we doing tonight, kid?
Well, right before that is when the doctor is assessing Forrest. And she's like, well, look, you get punched in the face. Your eye's probably going to be pretty fucked up. You could go blind. You could die. All kinds of terrible things could happen. But if you're comfortable, yeah, you could fight, sure. Forrest is like, hell yeah, I quit my job. All my shit's in storage. Put me in the game, coach.
She basically just goes like, are you good? He's like, yep, you're in.
She says, normally we would give this 3 months to heal and then it'll be safe. But you know what? The doctor says you might be okay. So what do you think?
Dana is so happy. And he pretends it's because he's happy for Forrest, but it's not. It's so he can deliver this news to Bobby Southworth, who will pay the price for saying he doesn't want that pep talk 4 episodes ago.
But we learned just how little time has passed through this whole time. Yeah. It's been about 6 weeks since they've been in the house. So who knows when this cut may have happened 3 hours ago for all we know.
Dana definitely has big Stephen A energy here after the Cowboys lose. Like he's just like, come on in, Bobby. Remember me, motherfucker? There is an incredible wide shot of like Dana leaves the office. I think he pats Bobby on the back. Bobby puts the towel over his head. He's emotional. And this wide shot shows that Dana's like fucking desktop computer, the wallpaper is like a ring girl from the UFC. It just looks so undignified.
Alex, if I wanted to credit the people behind this show with like just more thematic concerns, I would parallel this shot of Bobby pulling the towel over his head and just covering his face to the last time we see Koscheck in this episode as he's exiting the building, heading towards like whoever's going to drive him to the ambulance. He has his hoodie on and he like zips it up to where it covers his face completely.
They should have done like the crossfade between the two shots.
Yes.
We're having fun here. We're all having fun. This is without question the most serious anyone on this show gets is Forrest Griffin's evolution in this episode and it really Forrest, would become one of the most famous UFC fighters of his era, certainly. And part of that is because people just like related to and found his personality so endearing. And for all the bullshit the show is and how much fun we've made, it's genuine what these talking heads here throughout this episode of him. He has the line of like, he says, this is what I am. This is what I want to do. And even at one point says, this isn't fun. I want to win. And MMA is a sport that deserves to be made fun of, but it's clear this young man has made the decision. This is his life's goal. And it's like, dare I say, good television.
Yeah. Forrest was through very, very high, grand highs and very, very, honestly, a couple embarrassing lows throughout his career. Mm-hmm. He was always incredibly human. And you really see that here. And he's, honestly, throughout the season came off well, but you're right. There's a shift here where it's like, okay, now it's time to, because this is, they don't know, the guys in the house don't realize that like a lot of them are going to get a chance to find UFC regardless. So the severity of this actually comes off completely sincere. Yeah.
Yeah. Forrest at this point, he's here to do a job. He's clocking into work. This is how he's going to pay his bills. Meanwhile, Sam Hoger is the evil millionaire trying to close down the ski mountain. It's an amazing contrast to personalities here.
Yeah, Sam is in full Disney villain mode here. But before we move on to him, just based on what you guys have said, does that mean that you guys are about as happy as Dana with the fact that Forrest is the one going into the fight as opposed to Bobby Southworth?
Yeah. I mean, I don't dislike Bobby as much as Dana is because obviously Dana hates his guts. I don't really have an issue with Bobby, but Forrest is like, he's like the one person in the whole house who's been consistently likable, I think.
Yes.
The show's done a really good job of giving him the right light. And, because Julio, I remember a few episodes back, you said at this point, he became the guy you were pulling for in the light heavyweights. And so I think, yes, I remember watching this in real time, like, all right, crazy monkey man gets to fight.
Bobby Southworth is going to be on his corner, by the way. That was the consolation prize.
Well, yeah, because Dana says, what do you want to do about the fight? And he's like, the forest fire? I'll corner him. So what was Dana expecting him to say there? I don't know, like, leave? I don't know.
He was hoping.
Yeah. You got to go now, man? You still going to sit here like this the whole time?
Mark Ratner's back. He's like, this shit's still going on, and weighs in Sam Hoger and Forrest Griffin. And for one last time here on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, for just a moment, it's the Sam Hoger show, as we get these kind of back and forth talking heads of him and Dana. And Dana puts it incredibly. He's like, Sam Hoger played the game. He made it to the semifinals. No one talks to him. Everyone hates him. Like, I was waiting for him to be like, he smells bad. I just wanted him to keep like adding things on top of it. And then meanwhile, Sam in full, like that reclined position where his chin's drooped down. And he's just like, every card I have played has been played perfectly to the T.
The thieving was part of the plan. It was so, he's a mastermind.
It's true though. Like when you think about it, he did a good job of making sure that by the time he was hated, that they won their team challenge, so he wouldn't get picked to fight. And he did. He made it to the semis, and we'll see as the fight plays out. He had no business really being there, but he, maybe it's Sam Hoger's world we're living in, not 50 Cent's. He's got the real brains about this operation.
At one point when he's doing the like evil mastermind delivery, he goes, "Of course I'm gonna win."
Does he really believe this? Does he really think that this was that there's a cause and effect between like the things that he did on the show and the fact that he made it to semifinals? Or because to an outsider like me, it just feels almost accidental. And you see it on reality shows sometimes. I've seen other competitions. It just drives me nuts that there are some people that make it all the way to the end simply because they were never perceived as a threat. So yeah, you made it to the end because everybody knew that they would beat you at the end. So that's why they didn't cut you earlier, right? And I don't think that anybody had that strategy either. I think that there was a lot of just choices made during the show that were just about like, well, I just want to fight this guy, you know? I guess it's kind of impressive that nobody ever picked Sam to, they disliked him so much. They were like, I just want to fight this guy. But there was always somebody that seemed like it would be a better fight, maybe. I don't know. How do you guys explain the fact that he makes it to semifinals?
I don't want to roll with that guy, Chuck. I think he's a thief and a liar. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, part of it is that it was Liddell's team calling a lot of the shots. So with him being a weaker fighter, they weren't going to send him in to lose one of their own.
100%. That's correct.
Yeah, it is accidental. But the thing I would say about Sam, the biggest compliment I can give him, I have no idea like where the fiction ends and the reality. Like I have no clue. Because a couple of episodes ago you asked me, Julio, and I was like, no, he's just oblivious. But I'd forgotten that he does this like villainous streak here and his last stand as a character. I have no idea. He honestly comes across like a complete madman, to be real with you. I no clue. But I mean, his delivery is impeccable. He should have gone straight into acting after this, brothers.
The smile.
The only thing that would have been better would have been if he pulled out Bonnar supplements and took one in the middle of the talking head.
with some hoodies over his shoulder.
Oh, look what I found in my bag. Winks at the camera. The fight is on. Since this is our first time with Sam Hoger, I'll run down the stats. 24 years old, 7-0, 6'3". He's a big cat. And yeah, the game plan has all led to this moment. It's go time. All right, so when Forrest Griffin comes out for this fight, I sent this to Steve. It might be my favorite shot of the entire season. They show kind of like where the corner he's going to round, and the shot is Chuck Liddell has his back to the camera, and he's just like clapping, with his wide stance. But then Randy Couture and Nate Quarry are next to him, to the right of him. And they're leaned up against the wall and staring at each other's eyes like high schoolers like flirting at a locker. I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. But then Forrest like rounds the corner, and then they realize that he's coming out for the fight, and then they kind of like break their gaze and they start clapping like, "Oh yeah, let's go." It's a very strange and albeit visually hilarious moment. But this fight, there's the story of this fight, Joe, is that Forrest is terrified of getting his cut open.
Yeah.
And in the first round, he does nothing. He bites on every single feint that Sam throws him. And then the second round starts, and he actually comes forward and tries and fucking kills Sam.
Yeah, this is the first round here is pretty ugly for the reasons you described. Forrest is so hesitant. There's no flow to the striking. Like, they're upright the whole time, and it doesn't ever click. Sam fires a couple good kicks at range that are blocked, but like Forrest also has the injured arm, so when he blocks a high kick, like that's an issue for Forrest too. Sam, in line with his performance throughout this program, sports a fascinating face while in combat, which sort of, there's an element of regret, fear, excitement, all of this at once. It seemed to confuse the referee at times, but Forrest is just struggling for any kind of rhythm. He's off balance a bunch, and then, as you say, he goes back to the corner. In this, we do not get a Dana recap here. We get Chuck and Randy talking shop, just hanging out. And then as soon as Forrest gets some confidence from landing a couple shots, Sam's face goes further in the direction of fear and regret. And those knees in the clinch are pretty sweet, though, I will say. I mean, nice finish. Sam goes down real quick once he gets, clipped by a couple big shots. And you do have the incredible, I guess the actual last stand for Sam is the post-fight. I'm okay.
I know. I'm okay.
Yeah. The facade breaks, so he actually shows some vulnerability, I guess, the annoyance that having lost. This was very disappointing in contrast with Forrest's previous fight, which was pretty amazing. And here, my knowledge just says this is boring because nothing was happening. I wanted, considering you have the new main villain of the show on one corner, and then you have somebody that had been a pretty dynamic fighter in the previous fight. I was bummed. So I was like, it gets to a satisfying ending, but before that, there was nothing happening. So did Stephan draw the short straw, and that's why he is in Sam's corner?
Yeah, that was weird. That wasn't explained, that, he's holding pads for him and shit. And I don't know why he's working Sam's corner. It would have been great, though, in between rounds if he's like, I did take your supplements.
This would become a thing, though, if Sam, like, he's the career ahead of him. Because there's a version of this where Sam is like a great villain as a professional, right? Like in the UFC, because they love having villains on the roster, but his fights are no fun to watch, dude. Like, that would become a thing. So, yeah, it's just, in the cage, it's very tame and it's not very entertaining at all, unfortunately.
Steve, Sam also made the choice to get the double-sided mouth guard, which, with how quickly he gasses out, like me running up a hill, it really is obvious because it's like hanging out of his mouth, and he's just not a aesthetically pleasing fighter.
No, and when Forrest started to engage more, about 45 seconds into round 2, the look on Sam's face, he was a man who knew his time had come. Just horrible. Just looks as scared as I've ever seen a man look in a cage. Then just got his shit rocked. And like, he's laying there, just unable to get up. And then, the worker brain starts to kick in. He's, I'm fine, I'm good. But they do the talking head. And he's like, I shouldn't have lost. It shouldn't have been stopped. like, no, Sam, you got your fucking ass kicked here, bud. It happens.
My favorite talking head is Randy's, who comes in and makes fun of Sam's subpar defense. He's like, you just put his arms up. That's not defending yourself. You're in pretty bad shape when Randy Couture makes the effort to put you down.
As quickly as he entered the fray, Sam Hoger is gone. We say goodbye to the villain number 1 of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. We move quickly along to the second part of our doubleheader. It's going to be Mike Swick against Stephan Bonnar. I knew Mike Swick was small for this, as he, fought as low as 170. He weighed 192 pounds on the scale. And Stephan Bonnar, as we discussed in the very first episode, is and was a humongous light heavyweight. Yeah. And when they get in the cage, it looks like a video game that you're playing on like open weight mode, where you're like one of the small guys against a big guy. The size difference between these guys is so obvious, which makes how the fight plays out even more surprising.
Yeah, dude, 192 is crazy. Like, good Lord, man.
Like, could they not find another 205er? Is that why Swick was cast as a light heavy when he very clearly, at worst case scenario, should have been fighting middleweight?
Yeah.
It really speaks to, though, like, this is especially with what would become the Ultimate Fighter. This first cast of guys, this was from a different cut, man.
Yeah.
These were just a different breed of fighters, and the idea, like Swick knows he's outsized, but he's like, this was the opportunity they gave me, so I'm going to do this. And Julio now, like someone, a weight difference of this great would be, I don't even know if there's some commissions that wouldn't let it happen.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. It also speaks like their approach to this first season of they just wanted to get the fighters that were interesting to them, regardless of weight, right? The weight was almost like just something they had to work around. Like Mike Swick was someone of interest to Dana. Let's get him in there. Like that's genuinely the thought that goes into it.
Swick is coming into this fight so undersized, and they cut to Dana. He's like, yeah, I am kind of worried about it because he has been knocked out at 185 before.
He says it like he's a neutral, like he hasn't put this all together. Like, I don't know what Mike's thinking up there at 205.
That making him the underdog, clearly, did that make you guys be on his side, or are you still rooting for Stephan to make it to the final?
I remember watching this in real time, and it's that like joke from The Simpsons of, look at that quiet guy. He's going to do something crazy. And I remember thinking like that Mike Swick was going to be the second coming of Alex Schonauer, that he was going to come out and like do something fucking nuts. So I remember being really excited for this fight. And, it's kind of a one hit fight, but I was entertained with the whole process of this one. Yeah. Joe, I think this is a fitting crescendo. We get Coach Randy, in wanting to maintain his integrity, withdrawing from cornering the fight. But being the great coach that he is, he gives the boys here the last day of school speech of, it's been an honor working alongside y'all and training with y'all.
Yes.
This is your Coach Randy, I take it.
Yeah, I stood up and saluted when this started happening. I want to note that you used the phrase maintain his integrity, and we have to stress that is actually his own words. He actually says, I will remain neutral and will maintain my integrity. Which, after all we've seen on this show, having any interest in your integrity at all is incredible, man. Bless Randy. Speaking of Randy, Mike Swick claims that he intends to fight him Randy Couture style, which is one of the craziest things said also. But yeah, this is a fitting kind of swan song for the natural here. He hasn't won many fights, but he's handled himself and carried himself in a way that suggests they've like been undefeated throughout the season. Incredible.
There's a strange dichotomy in this that I'm not going to give the directors and producers of this show credit for, but the idea of like the animosity that Sam Hoger brings to the cage and people want to see him get his ass kicked. And then before this, like Swick and Stephan are at the house together in the same room, like packing their stuff up, talking about the fight and which shorts they're going to wear. And and then they get in the van together to drive over there. This was also the first time in the series I noticed that this is such a high budget production. The van they drive, it's just a magnet that says The Ultimate Fighter on the side of it. Like, a fucking small town parade would have the mayor's name on it. Eventually, they would have their own line of vehicles. But like I said, Dana was driving that Plymouth Horizon in the last episode. So they were pinching pennies.
It would have been about the time of this show, the hospital I worked at, the security squad had those magnets on their vehicles. And as a bit, someone took the magnet off and put it on my car, and I did not see it till I got home. So I came back to the scene of the crime to my plan was just to chuck the magnet out the window. I did not take into account the magnetic force would just bring the magnet right back to the side of my car. So I was caught red-handed, had to explain the situation. It was a whole thing. I had to talk to HR.
You had to go to Dana's office, and he said, I got good news and bad news.
Good news is the magnets work.
So we talked about Randy's integrity. We completely glossed over the fact that Chuck, I believe he was wearing his Iceman fight shorts while he was watching the fights here.
Locked in, brother. He's locked in.
It's laundry day.
We also should note that Randy's like, he's stressing all of this, and Mike Swick completely takes the bait and is like, man, I really sympathize with you, Randy. I finna just watch your two boys fight. And Randy's like, oh, no, don't worry about little old me, Mike. It'll be okay. Incredible.
Said you're going to get a win, but you're going to get a loss too.
Yeah. And Couture like hangs his head like, it is a tough life being a coach, man. It really is.
So this is the most screen time we've gotten from Mike Swick.
Yeah.
Which is just, this seems more of a fatal flaw in the design of the show, the way that this season plays out, more so than the Sam one. Because Sam got more, he became a villain. And so maybe you could say that he wasn't qualified to be in the finals, but he had a story. And you had a pretty good sense of who he was as a character when you get to the end. With Mike Swick, I remember seeing his face. I've seen him in the credits every time and everything. But we get to the fight, and I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. And I guess it's good that he has that size disparity with Stephan, because at least that gives me something.
Right.
Like, well, he's a little guy going against the big guy. It's not like a completely blank slate. But is this something that at some point, does this get better in subsequent seasons where there's a guarantee that you're going to know the people that make it to the final in a more thorough way?
The reason for that being the format change means that by the time you get to this point, usually you've seen a guy win one or two fights. So Swick is a mystery man because not only Mike Swick's a very tame personality anyway, but if it was a later season, you'd have seen him fight by this point. So you'd know, because Mike Swick's fighting, again, maybe not so much at 205, but his fighting would definitely speak for itself, in the UFC. So yeah, you'd have a very different read on him if the show was different, but in this first season, the format is a mess. So guys just stagger their way into the semifinals via evil master plan, like Sam Hoger.
There's a couple seasons too where how Lieben came back. There's way more egregious violations of that as the show plays out over the next 20 years. It is time, though, for our final fight of the season, boys. Mike Swick and Stephan Bonnar, being the first time that we're watching Swick fight. Run down the stats here. 25, 6-1, and stands at 6-1. My note here in all caps, size difference. It's I already mentioned it, but it literally looks like a match that would be booked as a gimmick in pro wrestling to accent how big one guy is over the other one. That doesn't stop Mike Swick, who quickly into the fight locks up a guillotine choke that Stephan's having a rough time. And again, since there's no crowd or real audio to speak of, we just hear it all happen. And it's very distressing.
Yeah,
his face is so red.
There's a few things, because nowadays, I think this choke would be swiftly dismissed because Mike has no control over Bonnar's body, right? He's just hanging out, pulling his neck. But because of what you mean, because they're a crowd, it sounds agonizing. It gives you some perspective on what this would feel like. It's he seems to come close to getting him with this, which is crazy because it looks kind of ugly, to be honest with you. But
Bonnar's panicked, you can tell too.
They you hear the gurgle, and then later somebody actually calls it the gurgle.
Randy, he's
Randy. Of course it is.
Randy's doing, he's I thought it was tight, but when Stephan rolled over and started making the gurgle sounds, I thought he was going to tap. While I'm maintaining my integrity. So this is a grappling, I wouldn't call it a clinic, but this is a fight that stays on the ground for its duration. And Steve, this is genuinely a heartbreaking moment of Nate Quarry sees it coming before Mike Swick does. And, we have had our fun at Quarry's expense and he's kind of brought it on himself. But this is clearly a guy who's been around the game a long time because it's one of those, he sees it from step one. He sees, and he's just warning Stephan, but Mike's too slow to react here.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the timestamp was that you start hearing Nate from the distance telling him to watch the triangle. But Forrest's legs are pretty much at Swick's hips at the time.
Yeah.
And Stephan's legs? Or was Forrest?
Excuse me. So he starts climbing that mountain to the point where finally he gets all the way up there. Stephan has the triangle in. And then he's so concerned about the triangle, he leaves his arm wide open. Mm-hmm. And just the seconds are ticking off the clock. And there's just no way out of it. The best case scenario is time expires. However, the best case scenario is not always how the story ends, boys.
He's doing Julio, you can't grab the cage. That's illegal. And Swick is doing everything he can to just try to get to the end of the round. And he's even grabbing the cage, trying for extra leverage and whatnot. But that's, I've been in arm bars just fucking around with my boys. And I can't imagine a guy like Stephan Bonnar. And it's basically what that means. It was about to break. And that's why Swick taps out here.
It's the first time I think in this entire season that I honestly didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
It was because then they stopped, and I was like, "Who won?"
Yeah.
The way that Swick falls to his knees, I couldn't even tell if that was like him relieved that he had won or him just destroyed that he hadn't. And it wasn't until Dana White starts explaining it, for the noobs like me, and then they show you the other angle of the camera that I kind of realized what was happening, because it looked to me like he was winning, like Swick had him, right? He has him pushed against the cage, upside down. His head is all fucked up, like Stephan's head is all like twisted. And I'm like, all right, so that's what's happening. And I didn't know that Swick's arm was trapped and that he was in pain. And I didn't even see him tap out. That's why when they separate them, I didn't understand why that happened. You guys are pros. You've been watching this for like years and years and years. So when you watch it, you can tell exactly what's happening.
Yeah, just because it's a pretty common. Not only is the hold common, but also like you'd be surprised how often the grappling is against one side of the fence. Like it happens very seldom, honestly. A guy is just in the center of the octagon on the ground, right? Because the defensive fighter will try and get his back to the cage, because as much as it looks awkward for Bonnar, he was able to kind of use that for his angle for the triangle. So yeah, it's very recognizable, but. See, in your defense, because of where they're in the cage, it is like very hard to figure out what's going on if you've not seen it before. I mean, they're like scrunched up, and the camera work is tough. So, but to be fair, Mike Swick didn't know what was going on either, so that helps.
And to be fair, if you haven't seen it before, the mechanics of a triangle choke can be very confusing. So essentially, what Stephan did was wrap both of his legs around Swick's head, but the money in that is you also have to make sure you trap one of the arms. So essentially you're squeezing in and you're choking the guy out with his own arm. With that arm being exposed, it also leaves the armbar possibility, which is what actually got him.
Yeah. The Undertaker invented this hold, or so he would have you believe.
True.
So. We've joked with Joe and, his allegiance to Team Randy here, but the way this ends, it shows the unity and that a real brotherhood was formed with the green. As the finales with Chuck's teams, everyone just they retreat to their separate corners. Here, Stephan and Swick embrace, and Swick tells him, you better win this thing, and then the remaining members of Team Green all join around and even Randy gets down on the shot of Jack with the boys, because, leading by example here.
Team culture, brother. Team culture. They were the Miami Heat before that was a thing. And it was a proud moment. I rewatched this a few times, maybe 15, 16 times. And I was trying to find the best patriotic track to accompany it, America the Beautiful was what I settled on for the last 5 plays. And it was very moving stuff. And it kind of shows you, it takes me back all those episodes ago when Randy was telling the boys about how they have to represent the sport in a proper fashion. Well, with minutes left on the season, we finally did it. Finally, some athletes arrived, and the Team Couture shootout here. Tremendous.
It's not acknowledged that Mike Swick lost because he decided to fight Randy Couture style.
Well, no, I mean that would be unfair. That would be. There's no reason for that kind of talk here. There's 2 fights on this show. There's a lot to cover. It's difficult. It's very hard.
One of my favorite reality TV tropes also, they have the bottle of Jack, but since they can't have the Jack Daniels logo on it, they just cover it in electric tape. So, no one will know what it is. But that is it for the light heavyweight semifinals, and the finale is set. It will be the Nightmare Diego Sanchez versus Kenny Florian for the middleweight contract, and Stephan Bonnar versus Forrest Griffin for the light heavyweight contract. We get a bit of talking head action here where Stephan Bonnar says, we're going to give the people what they want, and talk about calling your shot, brother. Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. 12 episodes up, 12 episodes down. We got the big, we got to find out who's going to win this fucking thing.
But for now, the Ultimate Fighter Training Center is officially closed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of TUFtwenty. A reminder to subscribe to the podcast, visit wearethecontrarians.com, and follow the Contrarians across social media at Contrarian Prime.
You can also follow Alex individually at Contrarian Alex, and you can check out our other special projects on our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. If you want to listen to Alex teach me about The Rock and John Cena, that's where you need to go.
You can catch me weekly on the Late Night Grin, live and free on YouTube every Friday night. In addition, Alex and I collaborate monthly on Grin Grappler, discussing some of pro wrestling's biggest and baddest. If those grins are for you, check out LNG Gold, our YouTube membership plan that includes over 50 hours of exclusive content each month.
You can follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at NotDrDeath. That's NotDreath. Or you can block me now and save us both a lot of embarrassment.
Until next time, be sure to make your coaches proud and don't call anyone a fatherless bastard.